That it's unacceptable. You know, we had a campaign when I was a little kid to stop litter in our country because it had gotten out of control. And I'm talking as far when Lyndon Johnson was president of the United States. So that's a long time ago. Most of the people here weren't even born then. But if you remember, Lady Bird Johnson went on a campaign to make America beautiful, and they had an iconic commercial with a Native American who somebody threw a bunch of trash out. It landed at his feet, and he had a tear coming down the side of his face. And it was just to get that emotional connection with the fact that this is terrible for the beauty of our country and our state. So banning single-use plastic bags is an important part of that. You see those flags blowing. You can even see the black bags blowing up in the trees when the wind really picks up as it has recently. So I'm pleased to join Representative Brady and other members of the legislature, Plastic Free Delaware, and other advocates for this important initiative for our state. And with that, it's a real privilege for me to introduce the sponsor of that legislation, Representative Gerald Brady.
Thank you, Governor, and that was indeed quite a shopping list. For those of us that were not just raised in the 60s, but maybe are in our 60s, that was quite a list. Councilmember Dee Durham and I were trying to decide which topic there we wanted to discuss with you. There were a couple things, the Open Space Council, and of course, plastic bags, and there were a few of us that remember the 60s. Retail stores. This bill encourages the use of reusable and paper bags at low or no cost as well. Limiting the use of plastic bags at large and chain retailers is a reasonable, important first step in establishing goals and minimizing the adverse impacts of plastic on our ecosystem. I look forward to a day where we no longer see plastic bags waving in the wind, clogging our waterways, and sitting in unrecycled trash heaps for years and years. Toxic plastic particles harm wildlife, present challenges to recycling, and negatively impacts our stormwater management system. Limiting the use of single-use plastic bags will go a long way to preserving our environment for future generations. We want our waterways to be clean and vibrant, our wildlife to be healthy, and our stormwater systems to be effective. But it goes beyond just a desire. This is a need for our society as a whole. Preserving our environment is beneficial for everyone.
It's been fun working with you the last 10 years, and I'm sure it's not the end of it yet. But thank you, of course, also to Governor Carney. On behalf of Plastic Free Delaware, we're thrilled to have your support and in reducing the plastic pollution that blights our state and our waters on the coast. I also want to recognize my colleagues from Plastic Free Delaware that are here today. Hopefully I won't miss anyone. They join me in the trenches every day, spreading the word, educating Delawareans all across the state, and working with the legislature and local governments to try to raise awareness about this issue. So Tree Sullivan is here, Patty Isaacs-Hansen, maybe you can all raise your hand when I mention your name, Cheryl Siskin, Mike Anderson, Chuck Wagner, Save and Low is with the Newark Charter School, and with Tara Kane has been instrumental in raising awareness in the Newark area on plastic straws and getting restaurants to switch over to a by request only policy. The Better Bags group also from the Newark Charter School, they've been focused, it's a 9th grade group that's been focused on better bags, and they've been going down to Leg Hall and legislating on behalf of this legislation, or advocating on behalf of this legislation. And the Odyssey Charter School students are also here today. And so many others that couldn't, from our volunteer corps, that couldn't join us here today. You know, it takes a village to make these sorts of things happen. This day was envisioned more than 10 years ago by Representative Valerie Longhurst, as Gerald mentioned. She's the one that got the current recycling law passed in 2009. But if you speak to her, she'll tell you that her vision at the time was to get a law passed like we're doing now. Unfortunately, I don't think Delaware was ready for it at the time. It's taken us 10 years to get to this point, to pass the law she tried to get passed 10 years ago. I started working on this issue when my kids were your age, and they're now, one is in college and one is a junior in high school, so it's been a long haul. Unfortunately, tracking the data from the retailers from the current program that's been in place since 2009 indicates that the recycling law is not really doing the job that we had hoped it would, or that it was hoped when that legislation was passed. The numbers continue to go up and down. It's not like people are recycling more. The numbers from the coastal cleanup and the Christina cleanup, which are one of the few data points we actually have on this issue of plastic bags, indicate that, you know, we're not recycling more, we're not cleaning up more, and more than 90% of plastic bags either end up in the landfill or out in the environment, as the governor mentioned. So the recycling, although a step in the right direction, is not the answer. And cleanups, like the coastal cleanup and watershed cleanups, although they're necessary, they are also not the answer to solve this problem of plastic pollution. Because single-use plastics pollute our waters and blight our communities. They make up more than 50% in total of our roadside litter. They kill marine life, birds and mammals, and harm farm animals, costing farmers and equestrians heartache and financial expense. They clog up the recycling facility machinery, leading to costly delays several times a day. And they do not biodegrade, but rather they break down into small toxic particles which enter our own food chain in the ocean and have been proven to be cancer-causing agents and endocrine disruptors. Recent studies have found plastic particles in 25% of the fish studied in several fish markets, and in 90% of your table salt. So just ponder that for a minute. It's everywhere. The full cost of single-use plastic pollution to our health and well-being, taxpayer costs in cleanup and stormwater system maintenance, and to the environment are great. It truly is a crisis in our time. Delaware has a long way to go to reach a zero-waste culture, but today we can celebrate one giant step on that journey. Thank you to Governor Carney and to Representative Brady, the other legislators who are co-sponsoring this legislation in supporting action to address plastic pollution today, this 2019 Earth Day. Thank you so much. Turn the gavel over now. I have the honor of turning the gavel over to Secretary Garvin from Denver.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dorn. So I get to kind of bring up the rear on all this and not say some stuff that other people have already said and try to fit in some things that we may have missed. First of all, I do want to recognize our friends at the Delaware Nature Society and the League of Women Voters for all their support. Now, before we got started, I had a chance to talk to some of the students, and I said, "Are you upset you're missing school right now?" And they said, "Absolutely, I'm very upset." And so it's kind of my job now to give them a little bit of a quiz and just to keep their minds sharp. So This kind of goes out to all of you, and it's a little bit of a trick question. Do you know when Earth Day is in Delaware? Very good.
Yes,
Every day is Earth Day in Delaware.
Excellent.
That is the correct answer. All right, now a little more difficult. Do you know what next Friday is?
Well, I don't teach it in high school.
Wait, let me get somebody else to try because I think you probably know the answer. Yes. No, next Friday is Arbor Day, where we celebrate our trees. And so last year, a year ago from next Friday, I think I now have the math right on that, I had the honor of being able to do an award ceremony for students who had drawn posters for Arbor Day. And there was these incredible posters and really excited kids who had their families with them. And so after we were done, I walked outside. We were at the St. John's Reserve, and there's a little picnic table, Governor, and there was a family sitting there, and their daughter had been one of the winners. So I just went up and had a conversation, just asked them, what school they're from and so forth. And they said that they had moved here from Iowa about 9 months ago. And they said that, everybody talks about the Midwest and how gorgeous it is. They said that really Delaware is much more beautiful than Iowa. And I said, well, of course it is. And they said, but there was one thing that they just noticed. They said, why is there so much trash and plastic bags and things flying around the state? Said to the point where their daughter was walking home from school, going to your point about complacency, and she stopped to pick up some trash, and another student said to her, why are you doing that? Why don't you just leave it? And so, the idea of going where we were, a little bit about when I was born to where we are now, and kind of how we look at trash has changed considerably. And I made sure that they were aware that the governor was saying that to Secretary Cohen and I almost every day, and looking to see where we could go to address this. And obviously, addressing plastic bags is a huge piece of that. But we have so much more going on here in Delaware as we talk about Earth Day and being every day. We have a huge challenge as it relates to climate change. Delaware is along with Norfolk, Hampton Roads, New Orleans, Miami, we're kind of ground zero as it relates to climate change, being the lowest lying state in the U.S. And so we're seeing those impacts now. And so, there's a piece of it where we have our responsibility of mitigation. And the governor is joining as he said, the U.S. Climate Alliance has stood up and said, despite where the federal government's going, Delaware is still going to make sure that we're living up to our responsibility. But we also have issues related to how do we adapt and become more resilient as it relates to climate. And so we've been working very closely with some of our more vulnerable towns and providing them sustainable planning grants. City of Wilmington, City of Newark, Fenwick Island, Frederica, Milton, Slaughter Beach, just to name a few, we've been working very closely with to figure out how do they become more resilient to the impacts that we're already feeling up and down the coast. We also have, we're part of a thing called the Resilient and Sustainable Communities League, which to me kind of sounds like where you play minor league baseball, but RASCL is really a group of folks that have come together to provide technical assistance, have networking opportunities between local, county governments, citizen groups, private sectors, nonprofits, to figure out the capacity to adapt and to mitigate and to respond to environmental changes. We're making investments in brownfield. So we're redeveloping, putting sites back into productive use, and that's not just meaning you put industry back where there's industry, but you're investing in parks and water control structures and other things that have quality of life benefits. Recycling in Delaware, despite all the challenges that we still have in front of us, our diversion rate is higher than the national average, and so we need to keep looking at the positives that we have. We also have our Bay Shore initiative that the governor mentioned on how do we continue to look at our Bay Shore and make investments and educate and protect. And then our open space investments, $10 million that was invested last year and the $10 million that is in the governor's recommended budget this year is really going to help us either create infill or connectivity to land holdings that we already have, or focusing on very special, unique natural areas in the state. Part of it will go to preservation, and part of it goes to actually active opportunities for recreation and others. And then we're making a lot of investments in water quality. And one of the things that I'm really excited about, it's a challenge we've been facing for 25 years, has been we have a lot of underserved communities that have wastewater and drinking water issues, and we just haven't been able to figure out how to get funding into those communities so that they can become more resilient, and they're able to have what I think every American deserves, is a way to deal with wastewater and having clean drinking water. So the governor has money in last year's budget and money in this year's budget for us to start focusing on about 91 underserved communities in the state. And so with our efforts with the Delaware Estuary and the Inland Bays and the Chesapeake Bay, and our continued work with the Delaware Geological Survey to make sure that we have groundwater monitoring system throughout the state, so we have good science to tell us where we need to continue to make investments, or make sure that we're holding folks accountable for maybe not being good stewards of the environment. There's a lot of stuff going on in Delaware. And we also have our electric vehicle rebate programs for those who are looking to potentially maybe not buy a bus, but maybe a car. So anyway, I thank you all for coming. I thank everyone who's been involved in the effort to kind of move the plastic bag conversation forward. And despite what we all know about Earth Day being every day in Delaware, I'm going to call the governor back up for an Earth Day proclamation.
Thank you, Secretary Garvin. I do have a proclamation, but I'm going to go off script a little bit and make John Starkey and some of the other communications people who've organized this event very nervous. I'm going to ask my friends from the Earth Group at North Star Elementary to come up to the podium here. Come on.
You guys go. All of you.
It's okay.
You guys are right.
Starkey's getting nervous as I speak, I'm sure. But we have this proclamation, and I'm going to ask you to help me read it in a minute. But before we do that, one of the slogans that's come out of this, whether it was the original Earth Day or environmental protection efforts since then, was the slogan, think globally, act locally. And these young ladies have been acting locally at North Star Elementary and their Earth Club. And they were telling me as we were getting ready to start this afternoon about their next initiative. When I was out there the last time, they were planning things around the school. And I'm going to ask some of these young ladies if they'll share with the group what you told me a minute ago about your next initiative. I have a volunteer.
So at our school, at North Star Elementary School, we have a Trailless April Challenge, and so we have these paper boats that you put your food in instead of the styrofoam trays that take a lot of years to decompose in the soil. So we're using paper plates so they biodegrade in the landfills easier.
I think you got all that. Biodegrade, reduce landfill, replace the existing trays with paper trays. Unbelievable. Okay, so now we have this proclamation. And you're going to help me with the whereas clauses, okay? All right? All right, so I'm going to start, and then I'm going to ask you to read the next one. All right, I'll help you with that, okay? And then we'll go down the list. This is a proclamation in observance of Earth Day. We're going to declare April 22nd, 2009 as Earth Day in Delaware. And when you have a proclamation like this, you have to set the stage with whereas clauses, okay? So the first one, as you can see, is whereas the first formal observance of Earth Day as a day of national environmental activism was April 22nd, 1970. And whereas
We nearly 5 decades, Earth Day has grown from a national event in the U.S. to an international event today, observed in nearly 200 countries.
And whereas
As the first state of Delaware strives to be a national leader in environmental protection, from our Bay Shore initiative to our ongoing work to ensure cleaner air, land, and water for our residents and visitors.
and whereas
All Delawareans are urged to take action today to protect, restore, and enhance our state's natural resources by participating in planting trees, cleanups, and other outdoors activities.
planting trees like you guys did, right? And whereas
Today, as we honor the earth, we reaffirm our commitment to protecting our land, water, air, fish, wildlife, and habitat, not only for today, but for generations to come.
how about that? Now you're all going to help me with this one, okay? At the end. Now, therefore, we, John Carney, Governor, that's me, and Bethany Hall, Lieutenant Governor, do hereby declare
April 22nd, 2019, as Earth Day.
in the state of
Of
Delaware, and
and
urge all Delawareans and visitors to make a commitment today to care for our natural resources and to make part of the everyday Earth Day.